in these last 2 weeks, there's been so much that has happened that I found it very difficult to focus in on what specifically I would write about. And so instead of doing that, I thought I'd give you a recap of some of the major things that I found important over these last 2 weeks. One of the things which I haven't commented on has been the issues in Bangladesh. So Sheikh Hasina has been overthrown. And this seems as if it's the continuation of the American, what we would call the color revolution. This is a protesters' coup. And Sheikh Hasina's father was the person who established the nation state of Bangladesh when it seceded from the state of Pakistan. It was East Pakistan, which had been established after partition as the independence movement after the withdrawal of the British. So as the British were withdrawing, they agreed to partition India into two states. One would have been Pakistan, and Pakistan had two parts. It was basically what we know as Pakistan, and then East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. And the plans for the establishment or for the partition of India had started, I think, around somewhere between the 1910s and the 1920s. At that point, the imperial competitor to the British in the region had been Japan. And the British wanted to partition India because they wanted to maintain control over a region that could overlook one Russian communication, so Russian radio communication, and on the other hand, that could police both the Persian Gulf, from where they got their oil, and it could also police the opening to the Straits of Malacca, which is another choke point, because we've been talking about choke points. So the part of the state that would oversee the choke point to the Strait of Malacca would have been Bangladesh or East Pakistan, and the coordination between British, because post-World War, so so these plans start in 1910, which is before the war, and then the Second World War basically ends the British Empire, and the American Empire comes online. And when the American Empire comes online, they looked at East Pakistan, and they basically took the British plans off the table and they implemented them. So East Pakistan was supposed to overlook the Straits. Once East Pakistan became Bangladesh, what happened is they refused to give access to the island of St. Martin for a naval base. And as a naval base, it would have provided oversight to the entrance to the Straits of Malacca. And the Straits of Malacca is that space that we've been talking about that is also dominated by Yemeni descendants of Indonesia, between Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. So the tightest points of the Straits are towards the end, between Indonesia and Singapore. And this place is also part of the strategy for the encirclement and containment of China, because 2/3 of Chinese oil comes from the Persian Gulf and has to be shipped through the Straits of Malacca. St. Martin is central to the plan of being able to strangle the oil supply to 2/3 of China's energy needs. The other thing about Bangladesh, it borders Assam, the states of Assam, which are secessionist states, and the borders are pretty porous. Once you hold Bangladesh and you control Bangladesh, you are able to support secessionist movements in Assam, and it gives you reach as far as Tibet. Bangladesh is absolutely strategic. This move of the overthrow of Sheikh Hasina is really about the tightening of the noose around China. And everybody's talking about the possibility of the move to a war over Taiwan. But I don't think that this is imminent. Now we need to move our attention to Africa, which supplies strategic minerals to the world. It is the cheapest and the largest supply of strategic minerals in the world. And so part of post-colonial strategy or post-direct rule has been ensuring that Africa is kept in the economic conditions that ensures the cheap supply of strategic minerals. And what we're seeing is that the Africans have begun to take control of their own destinies. And at the vanguard of that is the Alliance of Sahelian States, which is Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso have founded their Alliance of Sahelian States. This alliance of these three states, which is led by military leaders, has begun to basically militarize their population. They are recruiting their population into the army, and they are using that to fight jihadists who have moved down from Libya, so were brought into Libya. They were activated in Libya to fight Muammar Gaddafi by NATO, and after the fall of Gaddafi, they moved themselves down into West Africa, and they are the unofficial allies of NATO and are integrated into the CIA. They are integrated into the supply of drugs into Europe and human trafficking, absolutely. So what we've seen with that group is that they have been in West Africa, and so the epicenter of what is being termed terrorism, but which is basically activated as a civil war in West Africa between the nomadic tribes and the settled peoples. In the Alliance of Sahelian States, what has happened is that they are launching land reforms. They have expelled French and American companies. They've expelled the French and American military. And Niger supplies, I think, about 40% of French uranium for the production of nuclear power, because the deal was that the Americans and the French would support them in their war against these groups, and they were ineffective. So the Alliance of Sahelian States has taken that over themselves and are reassessing their alliances. And their new alliances include Russia and China. They have instigated two very interesting strategies. One is that they are militarizing their population and using that militarization to build their economies so that it benefits their people. That's one. Two, they have kicked out French and American companies. And actually, there is a third. And they have forbidden the export of gold, and they are using it to back their currency. The Americans will have taken that. They not will take that, but they have taken that as a declaration of war, because they see that as a direct attack on the dollar. So we've got a number of attacks on the dollar. The first one is that the Chinese are building a system that allows you to transfer for intertransfer of currencies between countries without having to go through any intermediary. The basis of American hegemony has been that you must use the dollar. So if you're going to transfer between currencies, you do it via the dollar and via the SWIFT interbank system. When the Americans shut the Russians out and applied sanctions and seized Russian assets, this gave notice to everyone that if you disagreed with American policy, your money was not safe. So now everybody is now transitioning, and they have done this. So what we're going to see is the expansion of a very hot war into West Africa in an attempt to shut down this kind of activity, which will raise the price of strategic minerals across the region. And we should be on notice, because not only will the United States not like it, but Russia and China, as their allies, will not like that, i.e. the allies of the Africans at this point, but they will not like the rise in prices of strategic minerals. So we are looking at a very precarious point in movement in the world. So that was the other front. So I predict that there is going to be a move into American and European interests trying to gain control over African resources in a much more direct way. We are looking at another phase of colonialism. Congo is an extension of this war. This is a resource war. It is a war between NATO allies for the control of the resources of the Great Lakes. And this is an extension of a war between these NATO allies, which began in the 1990s when the French supported the Hutus against the Tutsis, provided military support, training, logistical support, and diplomatic cover for the Hutu genocide of the Tutsis. This was to gain control of the resources in the African Great Lakes, and the Great Lakes region is mainly in the Congo, but is bordered by Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, and in its lower part, Zambia. So this Great Lakes strategy, or this battle between Western companies, is a battle between Western companies for the control of those resource supply chains. When the Hutus lost against the Tutsis in Rwanda, they withdrew into the Congo, into the eastern Congo, and then the French used them to support Mobutu against Kabila, and Kabila was supported by the Anglo-American alliance, that is Britain and the United States. When Kabila overthrew Mobutu, basically French hope for control in the region collapsed, and they withdrew to Kenya because to ship the resources of the Great Lakes out of the Great Lakes region or out of the Congo, there is a railway through Tanzania, but the other route is through Rwanda or Uganda and then through Kenya. So the French withdrew to Kenya and made their investments in the Kenyan economy. That was one, and then they tripled their investments in South Africa. And South Africa is the unofficial hegemon of the Southern African region. Or what we were seeing in Kenya was the securing of Kenya by Western interests to ensure that the route out of the Great Lakes region was through their clear allies. So when we see Kenyan police being shipped to Haiti to police a Haitian rebellion, then we have to recognize how this works. So how does this relate to Bangladesh? Because the Straits of Malacca is the route via which African strategic resources are shipped to China. So in Congo, what we're saying is about strategic minerals and how they get into the supply chains of the international economy. In West Africa, in the Alliance of Sahelian States, it's about strategic minerals and how they enter into the international economy. And when we look at what is going on in Gaza and the planned canal, etc., what we're looking at are strategic resources and how they connect, and controlling how they connect into the international economy. And with Bangladesh, it is about the control of the entrance into the Straits of Malacca, which is about supply chains, which not only chokes China's access to to its energy needs, but also you're able to choke Africa's access to strategic minerals. So wherever we look, and from whichever direction we look, what we see is that it always boils down to the control of supply chains. And with one extra in the case of Alliance of Sahelian States, that no nation must challenge the supremacy of American currency.